Hey everyone, Steve here with Phantom History. Thanks so much for checking us out on YouTube, and if you enjoy our content, make sure you subscribe. Hey everybody, Steve here at Phantom History House sitting in our library, and I am really excited to talk to a couple of paranormal investigators that are not too far from my hometown of St. Louis, Missouri. I have Gina Whaley and Laura Pittman here with the Witches Familiar Paranormal Research Team. Hopefully I got all that correct. Before we dive in and talk about the Mineral Springs Hotel, I wanted to learn a little bit about the two of you and your research team. So, Gina, if you could just introduce yourself briefly for me and everybody watching.
Hello, my name is Gina. We have been investigating for a little under 2 years now, and Lauren actually kind of got me into it, which is very exciting when we started at Mineral Springs and hit the ground running. And here we are almost 2 years later and have done so much. But kind of always been into the spooky and the paranormal, kind of always believed, had some stuff growing up, some experiences that just kind of melded into everything, and here we are.
Okay. So Lauren, it sounds like you're the one that convinced Gina that this was a good idea to start investigating it.
I don't know if I would go with good idea, but it was an idea.
Tell me a little bit about yourself, Lauren.
Yeah, born and raised in St. Louis, have kind of always been fascinated by all things paranormal. I had a lot of experiences growing up. I was one of those weird kids that had a invisible, imaginary friend that was most likely a ghost. But just decided one day it was October and I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to go on an investigation. I'm gonna jump in, I'm gonna do it. And as soon as I was done, I called Gina and I was like, dude, you have to come do this with me. And from there, it just snowballed. We ran numbers the other day. We investigated 10 locations our first year. And then this last year, we investigated over 20 locations. So it just keeps going.
Congratulations, that's incredible. And it sounds like you two were friends before you did the investigations, if I understood right.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, Lauren actually hired me. She was my boss. And so we actually just hit 3 years of friendship, and everyone's like, "You guys haven't known each other since like kindergarten?" We're like, "No, not really." And it just kind of we clicked immediately, and it went running.
Of
Yeah,
course, you know, when the chemistry's there, it's there. You know, there's no doubt
Yep.
behind it. So that's
absolutely.
awesome. And I know that a lot of paranormal investigator teams, there's like some standards. You have your equipment person, you have your intuitive person, you have your skeptic, you have your historian. What are your roles with the Witches Familiar research team? Do you both do a little bit of everything, or do you have your specific roles?
We both kind of do a little bit of everything. We're both empaths. I think Lauren is a little bit more sensitive than I am, but I'm sensitive in different ways. So like we can go into a building, she'll feel off in one room, I'll feel off in a different one. And so it just kind of depends on the location and what we're feeling, but we both pretty much kind of do everything.
Yeah.
Okay. And Lauren, go ahead. You're going to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say when it's a two-person team like we've had for the last 2 years, you kind of don't have a choice.
Yeah.
We kind of just we both set up equipment, we both do what we have to do, we both do our different methods that we have. And then typically I review footage and then Gina puts our videos together. That's pretty much the only thing that we have split.
Which makes sense. You got to divide and conquer, so to
Hmm.
speak.
Yeah.
And I love, Gina, that you said that, I believe you said that when the first place that you investigated with Lauren was the Mineral Springs Hotel, which we're going to talk about tonight.
Mhm.
So why that location? Why was that the place that was your first investigation? Just chance, or was it a place you wanted to go to?
It actually started with Lauren. That's where her and her mom went because it is run with the American Hauntings group by Troy Taylor. And so just like looking at his events, it was a close local one that we were able to get into. And then she came and was like, "Hey, this stuff happened. We have to go back." And then we just kind of kept going through American Hauntings until we started really getting our feet under us and branching off and doing our own thing.
So,
And I think we've probably investigated that building about 20 times at this point
Yep.
or more.
well,
And
and
we
I'm
even
glad
got to lead an investigation there too, which was very exciting.
And I'm
Yeah.
glad you said that because I know a lot of investigators, have like their favorite haunt that they go to where they feel like they
Mhm.
actually get to know the spirits there, not only the people that
Mhm.
manage or own or run the location. So Lauren, I'm just going to call you randomly, but if somebody else, if the other one wants to answer the questions, that's totally fine too. But I'm wondering about the history of this building before we dive into the investigations. if I read correctly recently, it's no longer a hotel. I think it's a private location now. Is that
Hmm.
correct? So tell me a
Correct,
little bit
yes.
about the background of this place.
So it has a really long kind of sordid history. I mean, if I've done tours, we've both done tours there. We've led them together, but these tours take probably about 45 minutes just to go through the history of this building. So just to give it a very quick overview, the area was purchased in 1910 by the Lure brothers, who had owned a butcher shop up until that point, and they decided that they wanted to purchase this property to make like a refrigerated meat storage facility. And when they started digging on the property, that's when they found the mineral water underneath. So back in that day, early 1900s into the mid 1900s, mineral water was all the rage. You know, it was one of those things where it could cure anything. If you had the hiccups, it would cure the hiccups. If you were addicted to alcohol, it could cure that. So, if you had an outside affliction, you went and you bathed in it. If you had an inside affliction, you drank it. So they were like, hey, instead of doing this, refrigerated meat storage facility, let's open up a hotel because we're going to make way more money doing that than we ever would with just this butcher shop. So they partnered up with another guy that owned a really successful hotel in Alton. They decided to create this hotel. It was, super fancy for its time. It was one of the nicest ones in the area. It was the largest swimming pool, which I didn't think was that big of a deal, but the largest swimming pool in the state of Illinois at one point. And it had the largest dining table in the state of Illinois at one point. So just kind of became this tourist destination for people. And then, over the years, all of the people, the doctors came out and they were like, mineral water doesn't actually do diddly squat for you. These people are lying.
Right.
And so they were like, oh, well, there goes our fancy business idea. And, business started to decline, kind of turned into this, squatters residence, pay by the hour, pay by the night kind of hotel. Still started to decline. They bought it, they turned it into a um, antique mall for a while. And then eventually it just kind of died out and now it's privately owned. And unfortunately, recently they just ended paranormal investigations there as well. So we're
Oh,
actually not even able to get into the building to do that anymore.
so is it becoming like a private residence? Is that the plan with the building, or do you know?
We're not
We
really
don't know.
sure. The
Okay.
person that bought it just kind of said, well, we don't want the liability of having people in the building, so we're done.
So, one thing that fascinates me about these old historic locations is they have so many lives and so many personalities over those lives. Like you said, from a
Hmm.
hotel, the place to be, to kind of be like a squatter's residence, to an hourly rate kind of a place. There always seems to be like this up and down fluctuation. Um, I'm wondering, one, the guys that bought the property were butchers, which is its own creepy little side story, which probably is not
Hmm.
even just in my head is creepy. But are there any like tales of like horrible things happening there that could lead to some of these hauntings that I'm hoping that we're going to talk about in a little bit? Is there any violence in the past of this place?
There were two recorded deaths on the property. One was a suicide, one was an accidental death.
Okay.
And then
But
there's a
other
lot
than
of
that,
theories and stories that aren't necessarily true. But yeah, those two
mhm.
are the ones that we know for sure.
Okay. Well, I know, Gina, you were saying that Lauren had investigated and came to you and said, "Oh my gosh, we got to do this place. It's so haunted." So, Lauren, what made you say that to Gina? What was your impression on your first visit, and what made you say this is the real deal?
So over the last several years, I had kind of started to, so I grew up in a very conservative house where this kind of stuff, we just didn't talk about it. And then over the last couple of years, I kind of started exploring that side of me a little bit more and kind of getting more in touch with that whole empathic side. And I actually had my first empath experience a couple years ago down in Louisiana at another haunted location, Myrtle's Plantation.
Wow. Okay.
So that kind of kick-started everything for me. And I realized I was like, oh, I can actually feel stuff like when I go into places. So, from the first time that I was in that building, there's this area in it, and it's the ballroom. And you wouldn't really think that, because this was an addition that was built on later on after the hotel was already established. So you wouldn't think that this area would be like haunted because nothing really happened there other than parties. But there's just this weird energy there, and you walk in, and just every single time I walk in, I just feel icky. Like it's hard to explain. Like it feels heavy, it feels sticky to me. I get headaches, I get that whole spider web sensation. And the first time I sat down in there, I was sitting at one end of the room looking down towards the other end where they typically see shadow figures. And I was just watching. My mom wasn't paying attention. And all of a sudden, they have these wall sconces along the wall that are hooked up to the electrical system. So when you flip the lights on, they all come on. But I was sitting there and I was watching, and just one of them kind of came on and then went back off. And so I like instantly shot up my flashlight. I was like, "What was that?" And my mom was like, "What? What'd you see? What was it?" And I'm like, "That light just turned on." Because I had been watching the whole time, nothing happened. And I was like, "That was insane. I can't believe that just happened." So from there on out, I was like, "This place is crazy.
Right.
I've
There
never
are
witnessed something like that happening again."
so Gina, when Lauren came and told you that I had this experience at this place, you need to come with me, you were like, I'm all in, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Because like I said, like growing up, I had experiences too. So like I was a theater kid with community theater here, and we had stuff go off and move all the time in our community theater. I was also a Catholic school kid, and we had a lock-in at our school once, and I experienced stuff. And so it's like it's never crossed my mind that, oh, I could go do this. Because I was never a fan of the shows until recently when Lauren was like, these are the shows that are legit, watch those because like I just always thought they were hoaxy. And so she was telling me that story, and then another story. We use this app called Ghost to, or at least we used to. We use different apps now, and she was telling me a story about how there was a hole in the floor, and the app shouted at her to stop because she was pacing before she fell into that hole. So that story is what stuck out to me, and then also the light. And so I was like, I want to go.
Right.
Can we go? I want to go. And then so we went, and then that my first time there, it was us, one of her friends, and then just another woman that was there, kind of like hung out with us. And so it was the four of us, and we were up in this room, Pearl's room, who is our favorite spirit there. We love her. And so much happened in a matter of seconds that just like solidified everything for us.
So
Like we were
what?
sitting, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was like, what happened in a matter of seconds? I mean, what kind of stuff are you talking about?
So we were sitting in the room. So as Lauren mentioned, there were two recorded deaths. Pearl's is one of them. So she used the hotel as an escape from her husband and eventually committed suicide. So we were sitting in her room. Lauren always sits in the spot where her bed was, and then I always sit on the other side. And so we were just kind of sitting there, and all of a sudden I just get, like Lauren said, that spiderwebby feeling. So I just kind of cross my arms, and then I look across the way and see Lauren kind of doing this too. And she goes, "Ooh, I'm getting that feeling on the back of my neck again." I'm like, I didn't say anything because it was my first time. I didn't know what was happening. And then all of a sudden, we had a spirit box and some cat balls. All of a sudden, the spirit box went off with like piano notes, which is just very weird for a spirit box to do. And our cat ball went off just instantly. And it was like, oh, okay. And then that's when I was like, yeah, so remember when you said you got that feeling? Yeah, I was getting it too. So that was just kind of solidified everything. I was like, okay, this is kind of fun.
And you said it was your favorite spirit, Pearl. Who
Yes.
is Pearl? What is her story and what's her deal? I mean, you talked about, of course, the suicide. Do we know like what era this was in? Does she haunt there regularly? You know, you said it was her room.
So that's the room where she always went to. Do you remember year, Lauren? I'm so bad with years.
It was the 1960s, early
Okay.
1960s.
And then so I think my favorite story with her is so they knew that was her room. Well, there's another spirit that haunts the staircase that's in the lobby. And so they don't really, all of the stories that go with that spirit aren't actually true. However, people tend to smell jasmine really, really strongly in that staircase. So a few years ago, Troy actually was able to talk to Pearl's nephew. And so he took him up into the room, and all of a sudden he started laughing. And Troy was like, what happened right there? And he goes, just thinking of my Aunt Pearl, and how every time I would come home, my mom would have to bathe me like 5 times because I always smelled like her favorite perfume, jasmine. So they then connected the Jasmine lady, who they determined was the spirit on the staircase, to Pearl. And so we kind of think that she has free roam over the building. Not entirely sure, but anytime we're in her room, we get activity. and she never lets us down. Like it was her room where we got those first experiences with the cat ball and the spirit box. It was in her room where we caught a light anomaly for the first time. It just seems like a lot of our firsts were with her.
So when you say light anomaly, what happened? What do you mean?
So when we first started, this was like our second investigation together there. So Lauren's third. I had just an old point and shoot camera, doesn't have night vision on it at all, that we just kind of set up just to see if we could find anything. And at some point we were going through the footage and we just see like this light flash across just like the hallway. We're like, well, maybe it was a flashlight. So then looking back and looking at all our audio, there was no one else in the hallways. Our flashlights were off. So it was a very weird, just like flash of a light that shouldn't have been there. So we're
And
not positive that it's anything paranormal, but we're also not positive that it wasn't.
right, you can't just disprove it. And Lauren, with that being your third time, and I think you said you've been there like 20 times now or something.
Hmm.
Are these consistent encounters with Pearl? Like, is she every time you go, you get an encounter with her?
Yeah, so Pearl is just one of those spirits that once she trusts you and realizes that she can make herself known to you and that she's safe doing that, and you're not going to get scared or run away or scream or do anything like that, like she'll have full-on conversations with you. There have been times where we've sat up there and I've been under for, Estes session where we've had 30-minute long intelligent conversation where she would just answer questions. We also learned that she really loved music from like the 1940s and 1950s. So if we would go in there and we would play 1940s or 1950s music, all of our equipment would start just lighting up like we were having a party. So it's those little kinds of things when you start to communicate with them regularly and you learn what they like to talk about, you learn the things that they liked in life, and then they just trust you more and more and they make themselves more apparent to you.
And like you were saying, Gina, the first time you encountered where the spirit box was notes, so like piano notes.
Mhm.
You think so? Obviously, that's a connection with music, right?
Yep.
Hmm.
That's kind of where we started exploring the music thing. Like
Okay.
as soon as that happened, we went downstairs and asked the lead investigator, was like, did Pearl like music? Like, do we have anything with Pearl and music? Because we got music notes over the spirit box. And he was like, well, yeah.
But again, connecting those dots, which is so cool. And is
Mhm.
is Pearl there alone? Are there other spirits there as well? I mean, is it a packed house? Is it just kind of her place?
There's so many.
Oh,
So
really?
many.
So,
We get
so,
activity all over that place.
Oh,
so
yeah.
when you say so many, are we talking 10, 20? Any idea? Total guess, I know, but
It's really hard to guess
right.
because, we have at least four or five, I would say, that are there regularly, that have their areas of the building that they stay in that we know that we can talk to and we can communicate with that specific spirit. But over the years, with other investigators coming in, there's been, YouTube people that have come in that we think have opened things up and let other spirits in. Troy Taylor's American Oddities Museum is there, and he has a lot of haunted objects in the building now. So we think that some spirits may have come in along with those objects that are now interacting with people in the building. So there's really no telling. I mean, any given day there could be anywhere from, three spirits hanging out to upwards of 50. We just don't know.
Mhm.
So it sounds like there's like the regular guests or the regular residents, and then
Mhm.
guests come in once in a while. And
Yeah,
I think it's
kind of like
interesting
a
that they have
hotel.
exactly
Yeah.
just like a hotel, and it's interesting that they have like their own like location. So Pearl has her room upstairs, right?
Hmm.
Pearl is probably also the Jasmine lady. We think there's a connection there to the hall or the hallway and the stairway. Who are some of the others that are there?
I don't know if we've ever gotten like confirmation of names, but the last time we were there, we actually were playing hide and seek with a child spirit in the lobby because we were leading the investigation. So we just kind of stayed in the lobby and we were investigating while we were there. And it was just really fun. We were playing hide and seek with some dowsing rods and like had cat balls going off. So we know there's some children spirits there as well. And then we also know there's definitely some cranky old men in that bottling factory all the way in the sub basement, and we love those spirits. We love the cranky old men. We
Hmm.
get them we get them going crazy. It's great. And we learned that they like when you tell stupid dad jokes. And so it was
Hmm.
like one investigation, we just decided to try dad jokes and all of our equipment went off. So that became our go-to in that room. So it just kind of depends on the location. Like a lot of people get a lot of stuff in the pool. We've never been lucky in the pool. Like we've
Yeah.
maybe had a cat ball go off once or twice, but other than that, we've never really gotten anything in the pool. And yet so many other people do, which
Yeah.
is the beauty of these locations. It's like you can go in and have so much stuff happen. The next person come in and have nothing happen.
Yeah.
Right. And and Lauren, I was going to ask you about, it's always the basement. There's always a creepy creepy basement. Um, Historically, what was the basement like storage? You said something about bottles, Gina, being down there. So what's the deal with the basement?
So really there's like two kind of basement areas.
Mhm.
So one of them is going to be it's a sub basement. So it's 3 floors underground. It was actually the old bottling factory. So that's where the cistern was for the mineral water. And then they set up like conveyor belts and everything down there, and they actually bottled it and sold it around the country. Some people refer to that area as the slaughterhouse. It was never used as a slaughterhouse. People like to say, oh, there's stuff hanging from the ceiling. It's where the conveyor belts from the bottling factory were. I think just over years with urban legends, and originally it was supposed to be a meat packing facility, but it was never used as that. So I think over the years, people just kind of started referring to it as the slaughterhouse, even though nothing was ever slaughtered there. Um, but yeah, that's where we get the cranky spirits. And then on the other side of the building, you do have to go down one level, right, Gina?
Yeah.
And that's where the big pool is. And then if you go back behind the pool, there's another area. I don't even know what that area was actually used for, but there is a spirit that hangs out back there. His name is William, and he does not like women. He's another one of those cranky spirits, but when we go in there, he loves it because we're just as sassy as he is.
Okay, and is he
His room is actually where I got scratched for the first time, which was fun.
so okay, so I have so many questions. So let's back up a little bit. 'Cause I want to ask about the scratch, but the bottle room where you said there's all these cranky old spirits, do you think those are like former factory workers that are there, or do we have any idea what those personalities are?
I'm not really sure.
No.
We know that they're male just from asking questions. We think some of them speak different languages because we've had instances where they have changed the language on our devices to different languages. And we've actually gotten other languages come through on our Phasma box, which is very rare. But other than that, we don't really have any names or anything like that to go with them. But we think that maybe they used to work there or just, you know, we like to think that because Mineral Springs is such an active place in Alton, that it almost acts as like a beacon
Mhm.
to the area. Because there's like, hey, we've got this mineral water under us, we've got limestone, we've got the river right next door, we've got all these things that are, super great for spirit activity. So just come hang out with us.
Yeah. Like a big neon open sign,
Yeah,
come.
exactly.
Mhm.
The other question I wanted to ask, Gina, was you said you were playing hide and seek with the spirit of a child with dowsing rods. How does that work?
So Lauren was using the dowsing rods because I don't have a steady hand with them. But basically, we're just like asking questions, and Lauren starts off like, okay, you can cross it for yes, move them away for no, or you can just like point where you want. And so we were like, all right, you can go hide because basically we had our equipment going off. And so we were like asking, well, do you want to play hide and seek? We can play hide and seek. And like something went off for yes, or maybe we heard yes on the Phasmo box. I don't really remember exactly. But basically, it said yes. So Lauren stood up and had the dowsing rods, and she's like, all right, if I get close, you have to cross these for yes so that I found you. And she would walk around the lobby. And then at one point, we got to the part and they just crossed. It was like, did I find you? And then like our lights would start going off. Like they had a blast with it. So we were like, okay, go hide again. And then we would do it again. And then she found the spirit under the table. And so we found them in a couple different spots in the room. So it was super fun. And we've also played hide and seek with an EMF reader before too at a different location. That works pretty well.
Now, do we know anything about this child, male, female, age? Do we know anything like that?
No.
Nope.
Just that they like to play and they're excited to
Mhm.
see. And like you said, you've done this a couple of times. So it's like, oh, it's
Mhm.
my play friends are here, which I love. Um, Now, so far, I mean, you talked about some cranky people. You talked about poor sweet Pearl. But Gina, you said you got scratched in a situation, and that's usually a sign of something a little bit scarier. Am I right to assume that? And what is the story behind that?
I thought it was great. Um, so it was So like we mentioned earlier, we can't go in and investigate anymore. So as soon as we found that out, we immediately bought tickets for one of the public investigations, went with our friends and was like, okay, this is the last time we're here. While we were there, we were in William's room. We're like, all right, William, we're not coming back. We're not going to be able to. This is going to be the last time you see us. Said goodbye to all our spirits, especially him. And we left. We made our peace. We left. A week later, Troy reached out to us and was like, would you guys like to help me host this event? So we were like, yeah. So we went into the room and we were like, sup, William, we're back. And I think he was annoyed that we were back after we told him we weren't coming back. And so we had about 41 people on this tour. Lauren was amazing, did the history part. I caboosed, made sure everybody stayed where they were. So she was in the room giving the story of his room and all of the stuff. And I was standing in the doorway with a new friend of ours that we met there. She kind of helped me caboose. And all of a sudden, I just like go like this. And she goes, what just happened? I go, what? And she goes, I felt that cold chill go into you. What just happened? I go, I think I just got scratched. So just standing in his doorway, and I honestly think he was just annoyed that we had come back when we said we weren't going to,
Which
because
which
it was literally like, oh, 2 weeks later.
which leads me to the question of who is William. So Lauren, you were telling his story while this in that room. So who is this guy?
So we don't really have much of a backstory for him. Just through investigating over the years, that's the name that's come up. That's the name that he responds to the most. So we've just learned that for some reason he doesn't really like women.
Hmm.
A lot of times women that will go in there, especially if they're alone, will feel like their hair get tugged, their back end get groped, scratched, that kind of stuff. Um, and he is really, really chatty. So if you have a spirit box, if you have a phasma box, he curses like a drunken sailor. So, and you'll hear it because, he'll be dropping F-bombs like it's nobody's business.
The
So
charmer.
he's just very cranky, very sassy, but we just give it right back to him. I don't know if he likes it or if he doesn't like it, but he talks to us a lot. So,
I mean, that sounds like a sign that he does enjoy communicating and that's his way of
Mhm.
doing it. And I know you said when we first started talking that there were two recorded deaths on the property. Pearl, who took her own life, which, by the
Mhm.
way, how did she take her life? Do we know? I'm just curious.
It was an overdose of
Overdose.
pills.
And
So
you said there
she
was,
checked into the hotel, went up to her room, took the pills, and then never came back down. Husband reported her as missing. They finally found her in the room, I think 2 days later, and she was gone.
tragic. And you said there was also an accidental death there as
Mhm.
well. Tell me a little bit about that.
So, Clarence Blair, he was, I think he was an older teenager. I think he was like 19 or 20 years old.
Mm.
Lived in Granite City, Illinois, came into Alton to use the pool. He got there early. Some people say that he was there for swimming lessons. Some people say that he was there for a cannonball tournament, which I didn't realize that was a thing back then, but apparently it was. But anyway, he got there before anybody else was there, went to dive in, but dove in at the shallow end. So hit his head on the bottom, knocked himself unconscious. Nobody found him until later that day. And you kind of wonder, well, why didn't anybody see him? But this pool was filled with mineral water. And naturally, mineral water is kind of cloudy and gray. So you can't see through it. So nobody found him until other people got into the pool and bumped into him, unfortunately.
Oh, what an experience that would have to be for somebody to, I mean, the poor guy, of course, but
Yeah.
getting into a pool and then hitting something with your leg is terrifying unto itself. Is he still there connected to any? You're saying yes. So what,
Yeah.
so how does he make himself known?
You like to tell this story, Gina. I'll let you do it.
Uh, Making sure I have my correct stories. That's the crazy Steve Corner story. So there's a guy that helps out Luke with these tours. They call him Crazy Steve. He's great. He's wonderful. So basically, they're saying like they're on one of their tours and they're in the pool. So what Troy likes to do is or Luke likes to let people into the pool. So Troy was standing in the pool. Everybody was like lining the sides. And Steve said he just looks across the pool and sees this guy just kind of standing there in like, an old style hat and a coat. And he's like, well, that's kind of weird. I don't remember seeing this person. So they turn the lights off. Favorite part to do in the pool, turn that lights off because it gets super pitch black. You can't see anything. So Steve's standing by the door, so nobody could leave without going past him. They turn the lights back on. The guy's not there. So he waits and watches everybody leave, and he just never sees that guy again. And so they believe that that was Clarence. And so people see apparitions. People have seen wet footprints. Again, a lot of people get activity in the pool. We just haven't. So what we know is all stories from people. The most we've gotten in the pool is we've heard footsteps from above us, which was weird, which we thought was other investigators. And then when we went upstairs, there were like three people left and they were all sitting down. And when we realized we were hearing footsteps on a wooden floor and there are no wooden floors, it's like, okay, we were hearing things.
Hmm. You
That
also
is,
get whistling a lot down there.
Yep.
what'd you say, Lauren?
A lot of people will hear whistling down there, so if you whistle, you'll hear somebody whistle back.
Okay. So, and again, it sounds like you can't really put that with a specific spirit. You're just like,
Mhm.
there's something there that whistles back to you. Is there, I've done conversations with people before who have investigated these older places, and sometimes they'll say, there's an entity there, but I don't think it was ever human, or it was never living, or, is there anything like that in the Mineral Springs Hotel, or do you think it's all former humans?
I believe it's all former humans. It depends on who you ask. Some people might say differently. Those are the people that believe it's a slaughterhouse or in the basement, not a bottling factory. In the bottling factory, there is a huge like sinkhole starting, and it's getting lower and lower as the years go on. But again, it's where they found the mineral water, and a very certain somebody once called it a demon portal.
Of
So if
course.
you believe them,
Give you
but
three
we've
guesses of who
never
that was.
Right. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. But that's
we've
scary.
never experienced it though.
That's scary into itself, just the idea of, that there is probably mineral water still underneath there and it
Mhm.
Mhm.
could open up, you never know. And, sinkholes down here in Florida are a thing all the time, which are just like the most terrifying way to go, in my opinion. That's just scary. So the fact that that's would be there is insane. It sounds like though that the up until now, until it closed, the owners or whoever was in charge of this location kind of embraced the paranormal side
Mhm.
for a while. Am I reading that accurately?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Now, did they have their own stories that they would share as well during these, or was it usually like they disappear and you guys run your own investigation?
So I'm not sure how many years, there's kind of been the whole setup of it was weird. So there are people that own one of the shops that's still in Mineral Springs. It's like a crystal shop. And they were the ones that were in charge of renting out the building for private investigations. So teams could come in, they could pay a fee, they could have access to the entire building overnight. And they were in charge of that. But then Troy, his head office was there, and then he held events there as well. So it was kind of one of those like you could either pay to do Troy's public event or you could pay to have private access to it. So depending on which group you went with, they kind of each had their own separate stories and experiences and relationships with spirits and that kind of stuff.
Okay. That makes sense. And I like that you say relationships with spirits because that's kind of how we started this conversation of like, oh, we've been there 20 times and we like know and we walk in and they know who we are. What's it like for you now that you can't get in there? Do you like miss these spirits or is it like friends you can't have access to? What's that like?
It at the very least, Troy's museum is still there, so we can go in and at least say hi. We can't go past the museum and actually go into these places. And the guy that bought it has actually closed off the upstairs back in the summer. So even the last few investigations we went there, we couldn't go to Pearl's room because her room's upstairs. The closest we could get is the little landing from the stairwell. Um, we even bought a thank you card and wrote her a lovely little note and just left it on the stairwell. Um, because we love her so much. So at the very least, we can go in and say hi. And we definitely, anytime we pass it, we go, "Hi, Pearl."
Hmm.
It's just it is very bittersweet that we can't get it in anymore. However, I think it's where we started, and knowing that our last investigation was one of the first that we actually like led a public investigation. So like it was our start into this paranormal journey, and it ended as our start into this next chapter. So I think
Mhm.
it's very fitting in full circle, and I hope the guy changes his mind and we can get back in there at some point, hopefully. But until then, at least we can go say hi at the museum
Right.
and any of Troy's events if he holds any more there. But
So,
it sucks not
so,
being able to go investigate.
so I'm curious. I mean, Jeannie, you talked about the getting scratched, and which is scary, but you're like no nonchalant about it. It's kind of amazing to me. Um, did anything
I
ever
went to
happen?
work the next day. I was just like, I got scratched over the weekend, and they were like, Gina, that's not a good thing. I was
Yeah.
like, no, it's pretty cool.
People are like, you're supposed to go to like a football game or a movie, not get
I
scratched.
can't.
Did anything happen in any of these investigations at the house that were legitimately like scary or freaked you out, or was it usually just more of a friendly encounter for either of
There have
you?
been some times where we've gotten a little spooked. Like Lauren doesn't like the ballroom, like she mentioned. I know the ballroom specifically, sometimes I get that irky feeling. There's back in the bathrooms in that room. It's just creepy. Like we've never really had anything super bad happen, just the vibes.
Mhm.
It's just creepy.
Yeah.
It's funny that, you bring up the ballroom though, because I have always kind of had this just ick factor with the ballroom.
You've
It
never
always
liked the
made me,
ballroom.
it's always made me super uncomfortable. I always joked around. I was like, I will go anywhere else in this building alone by myself and do a solo, but I will not go sit in the ballroom by myself. I just won't do it. Um, but one of
Which
these
I
last
liked the
times,
ballroom. I felt home in the ballroom. So that's kind of another example of like we feel different things at different
yeah,
points. Because there's another location where I was really spooked and she was like, what? La, la, la. So it just kind of depends.
yeah. But one of these last times I went in there, I I didn't have any of my equipment with me, so I just had my phone. I had necrophonics going. And I walked down into the ballroom down the stairs. I had one of my friends with me, and through my necrophonics, I just hear Lauren. And so I was like, "Oh, they're excited that I'm in the ballroom of all places. That's great." So I'm like, I guess I don't really have anything to be afraid of in there. It's just that the energy is so heavy that it just kind of, I don't know, makes me feel off.
Yeah. Well, and that's a legitimate feeling. It doesn't always have to be something creepy whispering in your ear or seeing something
Hmm.
wrong. Sometimes we got to go with our instincts, and something in that room doesn't jive with you. So I can
Yep.
definitely respect that. Now that you guys have investigated, obviously the place is very haunted. You know the spirits on first name basis. Very, very cool that you're able to do that. Where are some of the other places you guys investigate? Do you usually stay like around the St. Louis area? Do you guys travel further than that, or is it still to be determined? You're still trying to figure out where you want to go.
All of it. Like she said, we've done over 20 locations this year. We've spanned 7 states. The
Hmm.
furthest we've gone down is to Mineral Wells, Texas, to the Haunted Hill House down there. We have some pretty good friends down there, and they're like, you guys have to come. And we're like, okay. Which
Why
that
not? 10
location
hours. Who
has,
cares?
right, 14 hours home because of weather. But that is, we've gone all over. We've gone to Iowa. We have so many places like within 5 hours that it's
Hmm.
crazy.
Well, I think that's what's amazing about this world is once you get into it, you realize that there is a haunted location very close to you, kind of no matter where you are. And Lauren, I'm curious, as we kind of wrap up this conversation, you talked a little bit about how you were raised in a conservative family. It took you a while
Hmm.
until you started like exploring this side of your personality. How's the family handling that?
Surprisingly well, I
Good.
would say. Um, I'm not sure if my mom is too keen on the fact that I've started collecting oddities and haunted dolls, but it is what it is. She deals with it. She's like, just, keep them away from me and we're fine.
Right. And, I love that she's like, okay, you do you, and I'll do me, and we'll keep those parts, separate. I'm also curious, one of my last questions for you too is the name of your group, the Witches Familiar Paranormal Research Team or Group. Um, how, I know what a Witches Familiar is, it's usually the cat or it's a spider or whatever. So tell me a little bit about the name behind your investigative team. How did you come up with that?
I don't even really remember how. It was just one of those things where we were, trying to come up because, everybody uses, like ghost or
Ghost
spirit or,
this,
some kind of use of
dark
that kind of,
this.
yeah,
We
that
want
play
it to
on
be
words.
different.
And so we were starting to think, we were like, okay, so what, we like animals. We both worked at an aquarium. So we were like, we could be like, raven something. We could be, black cat something. And we were like, well, these were all things that, would be like a familiar. And we're both into, a little bit of witchcraft here and there. So why not just, the witch is familiar? And then we don't have to pick an animal. We can just be whatever we want. And then we went with a cat on our logo, but that's fine.
There's bats too.
You went with the most familiar, but there are a lot more. So I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I find it fascinating that you two have only known each other for about 3 years and are as close as you are and have had all these really cool experiences. And it sounds like you're going to continue to have these experiences, which is great. So my last question for you guys, and I'm going to ask you individually, and the question is, if there was one place, one haunted location in the world, doesn't even have to be US, one place that you would definitely 100% have on your bucket list as a place you want to investigate, where would that be? And Gina, I'm going to ask you that question first. Where's your number one bucket place?
Mine is very, very self-sufficient words. The Whaley House in California, San Diego. It is a place that I've been obsessed with for obvious reasons. My last name's Whaley. Since I was a kid and found out about it. Like since I found out it is dubbed one of the most haunted houses in America. I even went to go visit a friend in California a few years ago and I asked him, I was like, do we have time? Can you take me to the Whaley House? And then he was like, where's that at? I go, I don't know. I just know it's in California. Yeah, it's in San Diego. He lives up in Santa Cruz. We didn't go see the Whaley House. It's a little too far of a drive. Even we went to LA and was like, is there any way we can do it when we come back from LA? No, it's still too far, Gina. So that is mine. But like most of Lauren's are also on my list for more investigating reasons. The Whaley House though is my top.
All right. So Lauren, same question for you. Where's your blue sky, this is where I want to investigate someday location?
So I have always been absolutely fascinated by all things having to do with the brain, psychology, that kind of
Same.
stuff. Um, so I have always been really drawn to like asylums. Um, Trans-Allegheny is at the top of my list. We were supposed to go this last year, but our trip ended up having to get canceled, which was a major bummer. But we're still planning on going someday. But I would have to say Pennhurst is probably right up there at the top. They're probably like neck and neck.
Okay. That's not where I was expecting you were going to go. Especially when you start talking about, really obsessed with the brain and stuff. I'm like, where is she going with this? So it makes sense, once I heard the whole thing. So that's
Yeah, it's
amazing.
just fascinating to kind of see, how American mental health care has
It's
come, how
changed.
far it's come, how much it's changed.
Yes.
And we were both psychology majors, so that kind of plays into it too.
That ties into that a lot. I had the opportunity to speak with a gentleman who investigated Pennhurst and loved that conversation. So many cool things happened there. And, he was planning to go back. I don't know if he has yet or not. But yeah, I totally get it. Those are both really great locations to check out. And when you go there, I want to talk to you again to figure out what you guys hear your stories. Um,
Absolutely.
I want to thank you both for taking the time to talk to me tonight. I am originally from St. Louis area. I'm familiar with Alton, but did not know about the Mineral Springs Hotel. So thank you for kind of introducing me to this. I'm going to do some research and learn about it myself as well. I know it's no longer touring, but maybe on my next trip home to see family, I'll make a little detour and do a drive-by and say hi to Pearl myself. She won't know who I
Yeah,
am.
definitely go check out the
The
Oddities Museum
museum.
too.
Yes, I
It's
definitely
really
want to go
neat.
in there and check it out. And now I know two movers and shakers. I can say, I know Gina and Lauren, let me in.
Yeah,
So
there you go.
well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about this. I really, really appreciate it. Both very sweet to take the time to talk to me. And hopefully we can talk again sometime soon.
Yeah, that would be great.
All right. Thank you both. You have a wonderful evening and we'll chat hopefully in the near future. Hey, thanks so much for watching that. And remember, if you go to phantomhistory.com, you can sign up for our newsletter where you will be alerted when we have a new podcast that drops and also information about other events.